Hey, welcome to another episode of the Trans 101 series. Today we are talking about non-binary identities. I promise you, I did not mean to make this video at the end of the month, alright? I was debating, should I put this into Trans 101, should I not? Some people don't see non-binary identities under the trans umbrella, some people do, but I decided I'm gonna talk about it, but really I just want a disclaimer, I did not mean to put it like as one of the last topics in this Trans 101, it was an accident. Like all the videos were already planned, and then like I had already filmed a whole bunch, and I could I should talk about this. Anyway, so non-binary is an umbrella term, okay? It has a lot of different identities within it. Non-binary basically means that you don't identify with the binary male or the binary female. So you don't identify as one solely, basically. So some examples of identities that could be under the non-binary umbrella would be people who are gender fluid, or people who identify as one gender one day and then the other gender the other day, or no genders, or gender neutral, or both genders, or triple gender, trigender, a whole bunch of different genders. So basically non-binary is kind of all over the place with gender, and people can do whatever they want with their gender and with their gender expression. Now, most people that I know who are non-binary in my personal life use the pronoun they. So instead of using he went to the store, you would say they went to the store, and you are only talking about one person. And yes, it is grammatically correct. I talked a little bit about non-binary pronouns and they pronouns in the pronoun video that I will link in the description below. So why am I even talking about non-binary identities if it's an umbrella term and it has all these different terms underneath it if I'm doing a Trans 101? Well, there are a lot of people in the trans community who believe that transgender is an umbrella term that encompasses different types of identity. Within this umbrella, non-binary is in there. So people who basically don't identify as the gender they were assigned at birth. Alright, so that is usually the premise for what being transgender is. So by definition, people who are non-binary also follow that definition of people who don't identify as the binary gender that they were assigned at birth. So for non-binary people, they could either identify with it a little bit and identify more with another one, and so on. Now, there are people in the trans community who absolutely despise that non-binary can be put under the trans umbrella. The reason for that is that being trans, for some people, is you are going from one binary gender to another binary gender. So you are going from female to male, and there's nothing kind of in between. It's one to the other, and that's it. So putting non-binary under this term categorizes people as somewhere in the middle of this binary thing, just kind of throws off the whole idea of transgender. This is not my view. I personally think that people identify as however they want to identify. I know some people who identify as trans non-binary, and I know some non-binary people that absolutely do not want to identify as trans. I think that we need to come to a place where it doesn't matter where non-binary people fall or how non-binary people identify. I think that we should all just learn to respect each other. And it doesn't make us look bad if somebody who's non-binary says they're also trans. And I think that that's the big problem, is like, oh, that's gonna delegitimize trans people because you have all of these special snowflake non-binary people just screwing around with gender expression thinking that it's gender. It doesn't do anything, alright? It's different. If you are transitioning from one binary gender to another, you're basically going to pass in society as the gender you are trying to present as, and the gender that you feel like you are inside. You're not gonna have a problem with that. It's not gonna affect you. So non-binary people are real, and they are valid, and I have made multiple videos about this because I find that there are a lot of trans people who kind of don't want to talk about non-binary identities because it is a complicated concept and identity if people don't understand what it is. I am a trans person who identifies as trans. I don't identify as non-binary, but I like to talk about non-binary identities because if I talk about my gender with you right now and I explain to you how I feel, you could literally categorize me as non-binary. I just don't identify with it. And the reason why is because I'm going to tell you that I identify as 70% male, 30% squiggle. So make that whatever you will with that. Do that as you will. Yeah, with what I just told you, but it's basically that's just me. That's just how I express, that's just me. That's how I feel inside and how I express my gender, and my gender express my gender identity, and everything about me is just very queer, and that's what I love. So I could technically be considered under the non-binary umbrella. So the next question is, do non-binary people transition, right? Because if it's under the trans umbrella, usually when you're transgender, you transition in order to alleviate dysphoria, gender dysphoria. So yes, Non-binary people have dysphoria. Non-binary people have gender dysphoria. Some choose to transition, some choose to not. So I have somebody very close in my life who is non-binary and identifies as non-binary, is very feminine presenting and will not transition. And they don't want to transition. They don't want to go on hormones, and I don't think that they want surgery. And for them, it's just the thing that they need the most, the thing that gives them dysphoria the most is the pronouns. So we use they pronouns for them. And by doing that, we're respecting this person. And it's really not that hard. And I know that some people are like, oh, all these pronouns, everything is so different. Honestly, I know they pronouns can get, a bit hard to get used to, but I made a video on how to start using they pronouns, using my friend as an example, and putting it in the description below so that you can have a look at that. Because the concept of just respecting people, you don't have to agree, you don't have to understand, but just respect somebody that says, hey, I'm non-binary, I use they pronouns, or hey, I'm non-binary, and maybe asking some questions like, oh, how do you want me to refer to you? Because some people use Z pronouns, and then there's other types of pronouns that other people can use. The most popular one, though, being they. So like I said, some non-binary people do choose to transition. Now, can you transition medically if you're non-binary? Like, can you actually get a doctor or a therapist to write you a letter if you don't identify 100% as trans? So what you need is a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, right? And I've talked about this, link in the description below of another episode where I talk about that criteria. There are a lot of non-binary people who do have dysphoria. They just don't express it in a way that other people would. So I think that there are a lot of people who say, oh, I'm non-binary, but I don't have dysphoria. I think that you need to understand that having social dysphoria is absolutely a thing and something that absolutely needs to be talked about, because you want society to see you in a way, you want society to use pronouns, you want society to use a name. All of these things are dysphoria. You might not categorize it as dysphoria though, but other people would. So if you want to medically transition, you are able to if you are non-binary. There are some people who do informed consent hormones where you sign a paper and you get your hormones. And there are some surgeons who also do that even if you're non-binary. And some surgeons don't require you to be on hormones in order to get surgery. So that's all I wanted to say about non-binary identities. I mean, I have a lot more to say about this, and it's a topic I could talk about for like 35 hours nonstop. But I'm gonna go eat lunch and maybe talk about it later. But I have made a bunch of videos about non-binary identities, which I'll put in the description below just so that you can have a look if you're a little bit confused. And I will put also in the description below some YouTubers who are actually non-binary. Unlike me, I'm not non-binary, so I can't talk about the non-binary experience. But I'll put some links to my favorite YouTubers who are non-binary, who talk about non-binary identities, like being agender and so on. So, and people who are non-binary and agender and transitioning and going on hormones and stuff like that. So let me know what you think, and if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys later. Have a great day. Bye.